Nginovalo lana ngoba ubulelani angazi abanye abelungu bathathe wabalahla phi washiya mina ngedwa la. So nangihleli lana nje nangibona noyedwa. Umadleba akhanyilanga njengami. I'm going to talk about Kasinomics, and I call it Kasinomics because the problem with the idea of township economies or even informal economies is that it doesn't really talk to the power of the informal economy. And so I want to talk today about the power of the informal economy, what I call Kasinomics. And although I called it Kasinomics, the informal economy or Kasinomics is everywhere, rural areas, inner cities, suburbs, it's all around us. I spend a lot of my time in the townships and rural areas, and I have a lot of fun. So the one day when I first came to Johannesburg, I moved from Msinga. In Msinga, they call Johannesburg Wandonga Ziyaduma. And because it's a loud, scary place if you come from Msinga. So when I first arrived, my first job was a bricklayer, and then eventually I started a marketing business in the townships. But I first realized how lucky I was growing up like I did was I went to a Pick and Pay, and I was writing out a check to pay for my groceries. Now, most people here probably don't know what a check is. But I was writing out a check, and the lady behind the counter said to the lady who was packing my bags, she said, look at this white man, he's got hair like a baboon. Talking about my arms, not my head, as you can see. So I said nothing. I wrote out the check, and as I wrote out the check, I tore it out, I gave it to her. And as I gave it to her, I said, what want if any pali check? Have you ever seen a baboon writing out a check? With which she said, sorry, boss. So I said, saying sugumfene, saying ubas manj. I've gone from baboon to boss, with which this lady fled and stood behind this pillar, going, sorry, boss, and of course I thought it was very funny. I told her to come back. But I realized at that time that the biggest value I had growing up in a Zulu village was understanding, not about speaking Zulu, but understanding deeper things, understanding things about people's lifestyle, about culture, about what sense of humor or sarcasm, or what are people's hopes and fears and dreams. And most importantly, understanding people's lifestyle is able to influence and create very successful businesses. I'm going to talk to some of these opportunities today. This is a quarter. Most of you will know what a quarter is. Quarter loaf bread with slap chips, polony or spatlo in some places. As you can see, it's endorsed by the Heart Foundation. It's banting friendly. In 2005, I was asked by Parmalat to launch cheese slices in the townships. And at the time, in 2005, cheese did not exist in the townships at all. And they said to me, would I launch cheese slices into lunchboxes, into school lunchboxes? And I said, school kids in the township don't get lunchboxes, they get ikeri or pocket money, and they buy from the mamas in the schoolyard. And so I said, let's launch into quarters and into amakwenya. And at the time, no one knew in the business sector what was a quarter. Anyway, we launched cheese slices into quarters and into amakwenya. And today, Parmalat sells 3 billion rands worth of cheese slices a year, going into quarters and amakwenya in a space that never had existed before. And it just illustrates the potential size of this kind of market and what is possible to create. Today, I think it's very rare that you would go somewhere and you will not find a quarter with a cheese slice on it. So I just want to talk about Sia over there. Sia has 6 outlets, Sia's Chillers, in Soweto. And Sia started working as a call center, and his mother started the quarter business. Eventually, once they had 6 of these outlets, Sia left his call center business. He'd used the money from the call center business to finance this business. He left his job and he started here. And there were a few lessons that he told me about that I think are important. The first thing that Sia said to me, he said, Gigi, a quarter is not a quarter. We have to have modern, better, different type of quarters. And I think one of the biggest problems that we often do is that we say, we're just going to do something, we're going to open a quarter business, and then the quarter business is just another quarter business. There's something new or something different or more modern about it. The second one that he said was important was about creating consistency every one of those Gota outlets, those 6 Gota outlets, had to be the same experience. Because now you open this Gota outlet and then you open another one down the road, but someone buys the Gota from here and then the Gota in the other place completely different. So the power of a brand and a franchise is how do you create this consistency across what that offering is. I think just as a starting point, we need to start thinking differently about the businesses in this space. I work on a program with Supreme Flour, where we work with Township, bakeries, and fast food outlets and so on. And the Township is full of outlets like these. We're from Creina to Tembisa to Soweto and so on. As an example, that guy on the top left is in Ntate Sam is in Soweto, and he bakes 1,200 loaves of bread a day. And he used to be the head librarian at UNISA. And he left that business to come and move into this and start his bakery, and he's got 2 bakeries. And so I think often the mistake that we make is that people see the opportunities in this space as opportunities that are there if you do not have a job in a formal business. And so this is just like a way of doing it, making a plan or surviving. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we also make. He left his job because he thought there was more opportunities there. So did Sia leave a job to go into the space. If we do not see those businesses as our primary business and what we want to do, and we just see it as like some sort of hustle that we're doing until we get another job, we're probably not going to be successful. But more importantly, these bakeries here, the one on the top right there, Abram, he has a bakery in Karankua, and he delivers all of that bread to the local Gota outlets and spaza shops. Now, one of the biggest mistakes we make is that people say the opportunity is for those guys to go and sell to Woolworths or Pick n Pay or Spar. Guys, Pick n Pay and ShopRite and Spar and all of those guys are moving into the township because they're looking for the market in the township. And the people in the township are saying, how can we sell outside of the township? Where is the market? The market is not selling out of that. If Ntate Sam sold to Woolworths or Pick n Pay or Spar, he would have returns, they pay him on 60 days, he'd have all sorts of problems. The first thing we have to look at is where are the opportunities around us. It is no mistake those corporate businesses are trying to get into the township because that's where they see the opportunity lies. And so I often say we need to look in the mirror, not out the window. Look in the mirror. What are the opportunities that surround us within these kind of spaces? How can we supply the Gota outlets that used to buy the unsliced bread from the Spar bakery or whatever it might be? This is where the opportunities lie. The other important thing to understand is lifestyle is changing very, very fast, and it represents huge opportunities. You guys do not understand how much you know about the people around you and what is happening. So if you ask people, most people will say that especially people outside of the township, if I say to them, what percentage of people live in umkuku or an informal dwelling like that? People will tell me 80%, 90%, 60% of people live in informal dwellings. And as many of you will know, is that actually the vast majority of people live in formal dwellings, like this. So I took that picture on the top left in 1988 when I was doing in the townships. I took that in Diepkloof and Soweto. And at the time, some of you went around in 1988, at the time, every single house in every single township was either a 4-room like that, or it was a shack. Today, there's the same street at the bottom right there. The little white gate is the same 4-room, but all the other houses there, look how they have changed. And as we know, in our environment, every single township you go to, even if you go to an informal settlement or an RDP area, people are spending on upgrading their houses from a 4-room to a big house or a double-story and so on. It's never stopping. People are formalizing and spending that. And today, the figures from a survey called South African General Household Survey is 13% of households today live in informal dwellings. And that number is going down because the minute people are in an RDP or an informal place, they start investing in improving that place. Now, why is this important? First of all, it's important because we should be celebrating this. This is happening with no form of formal financing. But most importantly, when people move from an informal dwelling and they move into a formal house, they start investing in a range of different things very differently. When you live in a mkuku, you're just keeping the rain out and the cold out. When you live in a formal dwelling, you start spending on design and decor. So if we go into almost any township home, we find these beautiful ceilings. Now a ceiling like that, as you know, has no function. It's purely decorative. Who knows what is the styles, the designs that people want in ceilings? You guys understand that. No one will come from outside and understand that. The big trend at the moment, as many of you know, is chrome gutters. And I went into this house a while ago with some clients, and as you walked into this place, one of the women stopped and said, look at the pattern on those gutters. So I did a lot of work for PEP, and for PEP Home. And PEP Home was trying to understand what are the design items and decor items that people wanted into their homes. And we went around the country showing them this, and we'd go into people's homes and people tell us, this is what I think is beautiful. And we went into the house with those curtains in Khayelitsha. And we went to Khayelitsha with the buyers from PEP. Now the buyers from PEP are all white and Afrikaans going to China, and they're buying the things they think people want for PEP Home. And we went into that house, and the buyer said to the owner of the house, I love your curtains. She said, thank you. I waited for the society to pay out, and she says, and then I bought them, and they cost me 25,000 Rand. So the buyer from PEP said, oh, they're beautiful. He said, I'm from PEP Home. Have you seen our curtains at PEP? She said, I have. Who buys that? Because, of course, people have no idea what are the things that people want in these homes. And we're seeing at the moment a dramatic improvement where people are spending a huge growth in spending on things like kitchen cupboards and decoration within people's houses. Now there's a company called PG Bison. PG Bison sells high-end kitchen surfaces, and if you go onto their website, it says, we make beautiful spaces. And if you look at it, you think it's for Bryanston or Constantia or Msinga rocks. Today, 42% of PG Bison's business comes from the township. People are spending more money in the kitchens and spending on that kind of thing with high-end items than are being spent in the suburbs. And who knows what those styles are? Who knows what those designs are that people are looking for? Again, why are we looking out the window and not looking in the mirror and being able to provide these kind of things? And there's many businesses that are already doing well. That guy, Elliot Maeli in Orlando Eastern Soweto, he has 30 million rands worth of equipment on his floor, purchased cash. And he supplies PG Bison wood within his area to people who are making cupboards and so on and so forth. Chrome gutters, fences like that, mattresses. We have a lot of people who are doing these things, and the opportunity is huge because many of the times people are going outside of the township to get these kind of items. Another dramatic change in lifestyle is small households. Now, many of you will have noticed this, but maybe never realized how big it is. Today, we have 19.5 million households. Let's call it 20 million households in South Africa, of which 27% are one-person households. So almost a third of those, 5.5 million households in South Africa, are one-person households. Now, why is that important? That's important because smaller households spend differently. They spend less on things like staples and essentials and other household things for a large family. They spend more on beauty, personal care, going out, and electronics and other things. And even more importantly, most of these people have moved out of the communal home and they're renting a room, a backyard rental. And so the vast proportion of our population is actually young people who are spending quite differently. And this was a headline the other day. Cape Town's next property millionaires could come from here. They were talking not about the people at Camps Bay and Constantia or Clifton. They were talking about the townships of Cape Town. A massive demand and a shortage of amaroom or single micro rental units. And there's a big growth happening in this kind of space. In fact, South Africans spend 30 billion rand a year in backroom rental, on amaroom, on renting out backrooms, and there's still a shortage, as again, many of you will know. So when we think about it and we say, there's a huge opportunity among single or smaller households. 70% of households in South Africa today are between 3, 2, or 1 person households. What do they need? What do they need in the spaces, and how do they spend differently? If we understand those lifestyles and we look at it, we already have a bunch of companies like Indlu, Bitprop, Mastandi, and others who are investing in this kind of thing. The shortfall is this. They're only investing or giving finance to people with a title deed. The vast proportion of township properties do not have a title deed. What is the opportunity to be able to finance or to help build amaroom or flats on properties that people own but they don't have the title deed? Because the banks are not going to be able to do that. These companies like Mastandi and those others are not able to do that. What is the opportunity to explore those kind of things? And this is the way we need to think differently. A, how do we compete with formal businesses by understanding things? And B, what are the opportunities around us? So what are some of the sectors that are growing fast as a result of these smaller households? Beauty and personal care. There's 10 billion rand a year in saloon, in lashes, in nails, and so on. But the problem again is here. I love the picture on the top left there of that, those chairs. Is again, it's like the Gorda outlet that Sia's talking about. A Gorda is not a Gorda. A saloon shouldn't be a saloon. What can we do differently? What are the products and offerings we should be doing differently? The fastest growing sector in this country is beauty, personal care, lashes, hair, all of these kind of things. Despite my hairstyle, I've done a lot of work in the hair sector. The other huge sector that's growing very fast is what I call kasikos, from quarters to intlogo to amabledi to chicken dust and so on and so forth. One of the fastest growing sectors, and part of why it's growing is as people who live in amaroom, they don't want to cook inside there a lot of the time because then the room smells and your clothes smell of food, so they'll go down to the chicken dust outlet and either eat there or walk back home. And so there's a big opportunity in terms of looking at food and particularly looking at the food that people want. What is the food that people want? Now, I've got a friend in Soweto who's got a very nice lounge, and I went to visit him the one day. It was a Tuesday morning, and he'd been, they had Mogodu Monday on the Monday, and I looked at him and I said to him, "Hey, mfowethu, natu kateli, awulalanga?" He says, "Hey, Gigi, these guys kept me awake. I had these people here." And he showed me this bill. This bill has ice for 25,140 rand. Has ice trepe, Valpre sparkling, appetizer, beef stew, mlekwa. I'm sure you all know what mlekwa is, hard body chicken, a shisa nyama platter for 8, chicken feet and giblets, Verve bottle for 1,500, and 3 bottles of Hennessy for 7,000 rand. What's the point about that? Those people who are buying Hennessy for 7,000 rand a bottle were also wanting to eat mlekwa and also wanting to buy chicken heads. And guess what? I gave some advice to Woolworths recently. Woolworths were trying to understand how could they attract more black middle-class individuals into Woolworths. And apparently the line that they launched, which included Umleqwa, Mogodu, Amagwinya, and so on, is now their most successful line. Guys, that's not Abelungu going in there and saying, oh, let me try this Umleqwa, or whatever it might be. Those are people who are buying that, who are missing the food of their homes, and it's soul food. So it's not, again, about how do we look at different things and offering pizzas. I'm not saying don't offer pizzas, but what are the opportunities? These are things we know. These are things that are part of our culture. And the more we can understand what are the strong things that are part of our culture, the more we can build on that and building the businesses around us. So the spaza sector, a lot of people talk about the spaza sector, and so, we know it's lots of Somalis and Ethiopians and Bangladeshis and so on. But the spaza sector is growing incredibly fast. In fact, according to those figures, it's growing 3 times faster than the formal retail sector. What do those guys understand? I mean, we look here and we say, Pick and Pay flags spazas as a market's force. Shoprite cash and carry. Shoprite cash and carry. Shoprite decided their U-Save cannot compete with what I call a spaza, a supermarket type outlet. The spazarettes are competing with Shoprite, so Shoprite said, we will supply them. What are the opportunities of understanding what works in that space and being able to, instead of saying we want to get rid of the spazarette, why don't we supply them? Spazarettes, the foreign traders pay 25 billion rand a year in rental to South African households for those properties they rent from South Africans. Where is the opportunity to do more of that? To rent out properties to the Somali or to Shoprite or to Pick and Pay. They're looking for places where they can be in these spaces. We need to learn from these successes, and we must understand there's less of a threat and more of an opportunity. The other dramatic change is the move away from cash. That with the arrival of these devices like Kazang, Shop to Shop, Ikoka, and many others, now, for the first time, people can go to a spaza shop, a salon, a shisanyama, and they can tap on the device and they can pay for their groceries or they can do cash back. And this has driven a dramatic change in terms of people being able to not have to take a taxi to a shopping center to go and withdraw money and pay taxi fare. And this has meant that we're seeing a dramatic move away from cash. Almost 60% of payments today are happening on devices like this. So we're seeing a move away from cash. How do you take advantage of this kind of thing? Because these companies also allow you to get a loan, what they call a cash advance, based on the transactions. Ikoka, as an example, has at any given stage R1 billion worth of what they call cash advance to small businesses. All they look at is that transaction that you're getting through your device, and they issue you a loan, and they deduct a tiny amount from every transaction. So it's not like at the end of the month you've got to pay a huge amount of money. How can we utilize this understanding? Every single person has a debit card. When the post office crashed, people's social grants and pensions stopped being paid in cash, and people got a debit card. Everyone has a debit card now, and if we can get people to pay us using those cards, how can we then capitalize on the opportunities to get loans and so on from these devices? So I say this is R1 trillion a year sector, and people say to me it's impossible that it's R1 trillion a year sector, and then recently a company called Finscope said it's a 2.3 trillion rand a year sector. And this is why everyone is looking to the townships, because this is a massively growing sector, the fastest growing sector in our country. And you're trying to get out of the township while everyone else is trying to get back into the township or the informal economy. So I just want to end off with a last thing around understanding. Most people speak very good English, but they speak the English, what I call colloquial English. They speak their own English. And for instance, kinky, if I show this to white people, they go, is that a sex shop? Like, no, it's a hair shop. Julius said, white people must understand that black people's English is like airtime. Sometimes it runs out. Or that one at the top center there, when you attend the funeral of someone owing you money. That makes no sense if you don't understand the culture of funerals. Or that other joke there, ingane mazoba namategi suibonise ngane. The point about this is that you know the language that people speak. You know the culture that people utilize. I had a marketing business for 18 years called Minanawe Marketing. And what we specialized in was how to connect with people who speak English but speak differently. How do we change that, and how do we utilize it in our own things like a marketing, social media, and other things? So in ending, I just want to give a few points. The first one is ingwe idla ngamabala. A leopard hunts using its spots. It understands where it is. How do we utilize our understanding of where we are and look in the mirror, not out the window? What are the opportunities represented by culture, lifestyle, understanding things like how people live in households, smaller households, and so on? Embrace technology like payments, WhatsApp, IPIN, Facebook Lite. How are we using these to market our businesses? We gorillas, not the big ones. Small is the new big. Your power is the fact is you're in the community, you're able to change fast, you can move very fast, you can adapt, and you can keep changing. As you do something wrong, how do you adapt and how you fix it? Large companies are not able to do this. It represents a huge opportunity. And then the last one for me is scale up, not start up. The opportunity is not starting a new business. It is how do you take existing businesses and scale them up. It's very difficult starting a new business. It's a lot easier to say how do you take your business and scale it up. Thank you.